Good morning and welcome to Namaste today, an informative way to begin your day. I'm your heartfelt host and the Sensei to Serious Joy, Christopher Witecki. This audio blogcast is for Wednesday, June 7th, 2017. Welcome back, my friend. Namaste. As of 11 a.m. Eastern Time and 8 a.m. Pacific Time, Step 17 will rule the day. This is powerful because it means we'll be coming to a decision, and this is a decision about how we think in Gemini. In today's zodiac weather, I'll outline the planets and what the universe is building up to. And then later in our tea time, it's time for a Comey versus Trump showdown. I'll talk about Step 22 and Comey making an appearance in front of Congress on a full moon. But first, let's take a look at today's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is for Wednesday, June 7, 2017. And my global prediction for planet Gaia is sunny and certain, at least by the end of the day. Step 17 means we're making up our minds, and a moon wrapping up in Scorpio means we mean it. Let's take a look at the planets. Well, we're in the middle of the summer here in North America, which means we technically live a two-part day. You'll wake up to a spaciness with Step 16 ruling the day, but by 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific Time, Step 17 rules. Step 17 nets to a Step 8, which means we'll be coming up and making decisions in the next 24 hours. And because we're in the transit of Gemini, which is our mind, it literally means that we will be making up our minds about something important in our lives. So this is probably a turning point in your personal story. Each of the 12 signs will most likely be making some fundamental decisions about an aspect of their life, such as love, career, health, etc. But on a broader perspective, everyone in the world will likely be deciding and making a commitment to an attitude. That's what Step 17 really is in Gemini. It is the commitment to a certain attitude. It's a commitment to a certain way of thinking. You could call it a prejudice, but one that you have decided to take. Now, just because you've decided to take it doesn't mean it's going to take. That's because 24 hours after you make this commitment to an attitude, we will have a full moon at Step 18 Sagittarius versus Step 18 Gemini, and this full moon will be the real test as to whether or not this attitude will survive. So go ahead and make up your mind, but keep an open mind that you might change your mind. What's interesting is the full moon in Sag versus the sun in Gemini is basically an argument that we have with ourselves. And we haven't had this argument since Trump took office when the sun was in Sagittarius, and later we had a full moon in Gemini. So here we are 6 months later, and we're being called to make a certain decision or attitude about our life. And of course, what we're likely using as our evidence is the last 6 months of our life. Now, Sensei says, I would not use the last 6 months of your life as evidence for the attitude you wish to take. That's because looking at the planets, the last 6 months have been about dropping karma and ending cycles. And so we all got a bit of a taste of the old world and of the old life. And you don't want to use that as evidence to describe your new attitude for your new life. Step 17 really clearly plays out how one should make their decisions. The 1 is I love, the 7 is I sense. So according to the 11 Steps to Serious Joy and the architecture of incarnation, when we decide to take on an attitude, it should be based on our heart, Step 1, and what our spiritual side, Step 7, is telling us. This is one aspect that I find that separates the light walkers from the grays or even the dark-minded people. If you don't take into consideration your heart, Step 1, and what your guides or senses tell you, Step 7, you're not walking in the light. You're merely making intellectual decisions, Gemini, based only on the evidence you have seen. But if you believe in a reality where we create our own destiny and we manifest our intentions, then truly it's not the evidence of what you have lived which should count in court, but rather what your heart and your guides are telling you. So in some ways, this next 24, 36-hour period is one period where some people will take on a dark attitude by not consulting their heart, and where some people will ascend to a light attitude by deciding what their heart and senses say is going to be their truth. What's really super interesting to me is as we make this decision, Mars, Venus, and Mercury are all at step 1, I love. Now, with my own dialogue with the angels, I've been told that God never gets involved in free will. That is, never interferes with our ability to choose our life and correct our path. But here's the thing. If God were to cheat a little bit, it would be to put 3 major planets on the step 1 factor of I love, okay? So in some ways, this particular poker game of which way we should go has already been stacked in favor for love. Venus at step 1 Taurus means we're opening up to what we love about life. Mercury at step 1 Gemini means we're opening up to what we think we love. And Mars at step 1 Cancer says we're now pushing for what we feel we love. So anyone who doesn't choose love in the next 24 or 36 hours clearly has a lot of personal spiritual work to go before they can ascend into that light walker status, being able to walk and live in your heart. Another interesting little fact in the next 24 hours is the moon is in Scorpio, which means emotions are focused on boundaries. And the moon is in Act 3, or the third decan of Scorpio, which means we're emotionally focusing on boundaries we intend to take in the future. So we're literally feeling out what our comfort zones are emotionally for the future. And this is actually the last emotional moment before the moon moves into Sagittarius later and begins a full moon countdown. As the moon rises in the next 24 hours to a full moon status, your emotions will come up against what your heart and your mind is telling you. And it will be a tug-of-war between what our feelings feel and our heart is telling us and what our mind might be jabbering about or what our mind might be choosing to listen to. Put simply, this is a bit of a test, in my opinion, a separation from the girls from women or the men from the boys in the sense of in the sign of Gemini, where what we're doing is improving our intellect and improving our thinking, God Universe is asking the question, are you only going to go with what your mind tells you, or will you be more enlightened and allow your feelings, your heart, and your intuition to weigh in on that new attitude? And as you can hear, this is a very good example of how people actually become lost. In my opinion, it's our intellect, Gemini, and our ego, Aries, that allows us to separate ourselves from source, spirit, or higher self, however way you wish to look at it. And so this represents kind of a showdown as to whether or not people are going to live just in their mind, which can easily turn into hell down the line, or they're going to live into their whole being, which is what allows you to experience heaven on earth. It's very interesting, and don't worry, you can't really fail these things. All you can do is make the wrong choice, and if you find yourself extremely unhappy, you'll have to undo it. What I find super fascinating is actually the topic of today's tea time. As we all have this separation of intellect versus heart and feelings, we're going to have a bit of a showdown between James Comey, who is a Step 22 Sagittarius, and of course, our endearing President Trump, who is the direct opposite at Step 22 Gemini. So go steep yourself some tea, and let's have a fascinating tea time. Hello, my friend, and welcome to our tea time. Today's tea time topic is Comey versus Trump, a quantum showdown. As they say in astrology, what is above is also below. And in the planets, that's also the case when it comes to what is going on in the big public world. The above is the same as what's going on in our own inner world, the below. In this case, everyone on Earth, including in the public display, will go through a bit of a philosophical showdown in the next 36 hours with the full moon in Sagittarius. And frankly, every year when the sun and moon oppose each other in Gemini and Sagittarius, whether it happens when the sun is in Sag or the sun is in Gemini, human beings go through a bit of a debate with themselves when it comes to what they believe, Sagittarius, and what they actually think and say, Gemini. And since we're in the sun in Gemini right now, it's more likely that we will change what we think and what we say versus what we believe. Because the moon in Sagittarius is going to make us very passionate about what we believe and likely inspire a change of thought. Now, that said, if you're not up on current headlines, former FBI Director James Comey will go in front of Congress on Thursday morning, which, by the way, is the beginning of the buildup of the full moon in Sagittarius versus the sun in Gemini. James Comey is a step 22 Sagittarius. Donald Trump is a step 22 Gemini. These two men are literally quantum opposites. Literally, they have each other's anti-birthdays astrologically exactly 6 months. This is literally a villain and a hero, however you want to light and dark this, and however you want to choose one side or the other. So it's kind of fascinating that as we all spiritually in our own inner world come to this debate inside of us between belief and what we actually say and think, that we're going to kind of experience a bit of a national showdown between two very iconic men who each represent each of the same opposing sides, Sagittarius versus Gemini. Now, I'm kind of tickled about this in just a little bit of a way because I've always been teaching for at least 11 years now that Step 22 personalities are personalities that end up changing the world. Why is that? Because Step 22 is the Grandmaster step of Aquarius. 2 plus 2 makes 4. This is the highest 4 you can get, or the highest net 4 you can get in a 30-degree astrological cycle. So anyone who's a Step 22 is a master manipulator, a master person of influence. And I would say, honestly, both Comey and President Trump are master manipulators. Comey may be a wonderful man with great morals, but I'll tell you right now, if he's interviewing some sort of suspected felon, he's manipulating the hell out of that situation to get the testimony and the truth he needs out of that, quote, criminal. So really, these two men are the same kind of men. They just have different philosophies behind how they use their quantum powers. It's important to note that Step 22 is really emotion plus emotion. So Step 22 moments are when we have great emotions colliding, such as the Republicans and the Democrats, or the North and the South, right? We've all seen these oppositions. And so literally these two men are embodying the clashing of huge emotional tides of the nation, and they're literally having a bit of a showdown. It's funny, at first it was just going to be James Comey testifying in front of Congress, but I just read that President Trump is going to hold a news conference during the testimony, so he's literally going to try to trump the ratings of James Comey's testimony in front of Congress. It's literally a quantum showdown, and the ratings might be really what tells us who sort of wins. Now, predicting this, looking at the actual day, the astrology of Thursday morning, Thursday will be a Step 18 day. The interesting thing is, today, the Step 17 day, this is the day where people are actually making up their mind and deciding already who they think is innocent or guilty, Trump versus Comey. So, interestingly enough, with how this works, everyone will have already a prejudice going into this trial, regardless of what the truth is. And with the full moon, everyone's prejudice, or at least let's say one of those two twos, will likely be let down. Now, I don't think we're actually going to get much out of this. We probably might have some sort of bomb that comes out from James Comey, but I'm assuming that Trump's cool demeanor about this means that his Gemini self has already thought through all the different possibilities of what could go wrong, and he's, basically safe during this particular trial. Otherwise, I think he would have tried to literally disrupt Comey from testifying. What I think this is really about is about the American public's feelings about one side or the other. That's really what this trial is about, is to see which side of America goes and feels there with Trump and what side feels there with Comey. And I'm guessing that very few people will actually switch sides, so to speak. In other words, I doubt we'll see a Trump person jump to Comey's side, and I doubt we'll see a Comey person jump to Trump's side. Remember, the thing about Gemini is what we think. And what we think is, frankly, what we choose to think. What we ignore is, frankly, what we choose to ignore. So this is where the outer world, or what is above, actually is in complete harmony with what is below. Regardless of how the facts come out in the national stage, most human beings will make up their mind or have some sort of opinion about it, even though they won't get to hear the secret testimony that goes on afterwards with Congress, even though none of us really know the facts. Most people will decide to go with one side or the other, and again, that decision will likely either be based on their mind, pure Gemini, or what their heart, feelings, and soul are telling them. So in a way, this little Comey versus Trump showdown is kind of like an extra version of what's going on inside of us. And the answer is the same. There is no right answer in a universe in which you choose to create your reality. There is only the answer that you choose to create. So in other words, I predict this national spectacle basically to turn out to be nothing. Nothing really when it comes to how it changes our national politics at the moment. Nothing really as far as, mouth-gasping evidence that opens up. I think what this really is some sort of national ballet for people to further either conclude that they follow their own opinion in their mind, or to decide that maybe they changed their mind in their opinion. I've actually talked to a couple of citizens who've recently been very swinging to Trump's side because they've been insulted at the comedians and the dark humor that's come out against Trump. They think that that's really bad for anyone to do for a president. And I thought to myself, that's not even about politics. This is angering people about how we treat one another. So this is definitely a big can of worms. And when I say a big can of worms, I'm talking about President Trump. I'm really starting to believe that the legacy of Trump is with the sun conjuncting Uranus, which is what he is in his chart. He has the sun at 22 degrees, which is the grandmaster step of Uranus, conjuncting Uranus. So as far as 22-ness is concerned, he really does trump James Comey. He's got more 22 in him. He's got more shock value. But I believe that's why he's been brought by the universe. I have to say, the more we get into this whole Trump thing, the more I see that this is some sort of divine instigator, which is what Uranus is. And in the end, what is it instigating? It's instigating us to rise up. It's instigating us to question our government, which we should. I've been doubting for a long time, if you haven't, you know what I mean? It's forcing us to question all of our morals as far as what's right and what's wrong. And honestly, I'm not getting too upset about the policies or procedures that President Trump has put into place, even though I completely am against the fact that we left the Paris Accord. I think that wasn't a good thing. I mean, my personal opinion is like, gosh, these aren't choices I would make for Earth. But when I look at the big picture of things, where human beings have frankly been doing nothing since really Watergate was the last time we seemed to care, we've been really complacent, not really doing much, and I see this man who is a grand instigator come in, and suddenly people are rising up, suddenly light walkers are deciding they're light walkers, suddenly people are moving forward. See, in the end, the net result of this is positive. But that said, with a showdown between Comey and Trump, who do you think might win, looking at them astrologically? The truth is, Trump has Comey trumped, and here's why. I'll give you a little backstory. James Comey also has a moon in Scorpio, so he can feel bullshit. He's got a gold bullshit detector. His moon in Scorpio pretty much conjuncts Hillary Clinton's sun. Her sun is in Scorpio at step 2 or 3. We're not sure on her birth time. And Comey's moon is somewhere around there too. So the point is that I think part of the reason why Comey went after Hillary is because he smelled bullshit. His moon felt and read her, and he didn't have the evidence, but he smelled a rat, okay? Now flip over to Donald Trump. Here's the weird thing. Donald Trump's moon is actually on James Comey's sun, which means Donald Trump's moon in Sagittarius can really read and smell James Comey's bullshit. Okay, so like, even though Comey may actually be completely correct in his sun in Sagittarius theories about how things should go and how things should be, and I probably will side with Comey in lots of ways as far as the way we ought to do it. That's what Sagittarius is, a belief, a standard we ought to live by. But on the other hand, when it comes to playing chess, Gemini, Donald Trump, Gemini energy is a lot more focused on step by step, chess move by chess move. And honestly, when it comes to Sag versus Gemini, Geminis quite often have an ability to turn their back on God, love, and everything and win the game, whether or not they're philosophically right or not. So if I were to predict a winner, let's say in a spiritual boxing match between Trump and Comey, I'm afraid to say President Trump, I think, would win. He has the sun conjuncting Uranus, which is the grandmaster of 22, and he's got an emotional moon. He was born in a full moon. This full moon is the same full moon he was born in, only at a different degree. So in the next 36 hours, he's lit up like a Christmas tree. And unfortunately, Comey will feel a bit dim, but he will have the moon in his sign, so he will be propped up. But the sun is in his opposite sign, which means this is his lowest point of the year, his anti-birthday period. So the planets are definitely in favor, I would say, of Trump in this next 36-hour round of chess. Now, the reason why this is so important to us now, in my opinion, is because Saturn is in Sagittarius. Saturn in Sag means right now the public is really debating the way things should be. Sagittarius, the way we believe they should be, the way we want them to be. And with Saturn in Sagittarius, all this chaotic 22 energy is really getting Americans to get deep in their feelings, get deep in their beliefs, and decide for themselves, what do they really believe in? Sometimes we have to lose something in order to understand that we value something else and that we believe in something else. So there absolutely will be spiritual winners and losers here. But as far as the story of President Trump and this Russia thing and this investigation, looking at the astrology, I doubt it will move at all, this story, until Saturn goes direct, which will not be until August 26th. So I would not expect anything fascinating or really solid to come out of this President Trump investigation until after the Great American Solar Eclipse on the 21st. And honestly, we should all be praying that that eclipse does not invoke our president to start some sort of world conflict, because his ego will be lit up like a Christmas tree at that time. And that would, of course, be a very bad distraction from the truth coming out. My advice is to get some popcorn and to program your TiVo, because in the next year and a half, we're about to witness the greatest reality series that was ever shot. All right, my friend, that wraps up our service for today. And speaking of service, I have a personal Sensei service if you don't know. If you haven't given this a try, you might consider it. I break down your personal astrology for your sun sign and your rising sign hour by hour in real time. You can try it for just $3.99. For a video about my service, visit SeriousJoy.com. All right, friends. Have a fabulous 24 hours. I'll be watching the tube with you. Until then, remember I love you, and to live, love, be.
Live, love, be.